Hi, is this Juliet Harmon? A woman's voice asked on my phone while I was sitting in my grief therapist's office, ostensibly there to process the fact that my husband had been dead for 8 months and I still couldn't sleep without medication. I'm calling from Zenith Viatical Solutions. We're calling to verify some documentation regarding a life insurance policy transfer. I had no idea what she was talking about. I'm sorry, what? You are the beneficiary of a $500,000 life insurance policy under the name of Thomas Harmon, correct? We've received a request to purchase this policy from a third party. Before we can proceed, we need to verify your consent for the sale and collect your signature on some transfer documents. The room started spinning. What do you mean, sell? Who's trying to sell my husband's insurance? According to our records, the policy owner, listed as Diane Patterson, has initiated the viatical settlement request. We need you to confirm that you authorize this sale. I didn't authorize anything. And Diane Patterson was my mother. My name is Juliet Harmon, and I was about to discover that my mother, the woman I'd turned to for comfort after my husband's death, the woman who'd stayed at my house for 3 months after Thomas died, the woman I'd trusted with access to his important documents while I was too devastated to function, had been systematically trying to steal my dead husband's life insurance policy. Let me back up. Thomas died in a car accident on a Friday in January. A drunk driver hit him on his way home from work. He was pronounced dead at the hospital at 11:47 p.m. I got the call while I was sitting on the couch watching mindless television, and my entire world ended in approximately 30 seconds. Thomas was 38 years old. We'd been married for 5 years. We didn't have children, but we'd been planning to start a family that spring. He was a good man. A kind man. A man who loved me and made me laugh and was supposed to be here for 50 more years. Instead, he was gone. The funeral was a blur. The insurance companies were a blur. The probate paperwork was a blur. I existed in a fog of grief and shock and denial that made everything feel surreal. My mother, Diane, flew in from Arizona immediately. She was there before the funeral. She stayed through the service. She stayed after, cooking meals I couldn't eat, answering phones I couldn't bear to answer, and generally making sure I didn't completely fall apart. Let me take care of the paperwork, she said a week after the funeral. You're not in any condition to deal with this. Just give me access to his documents and I'll handle everything. I was so grateful. So desperate for someone to carry the burden. So completely destroyed by grief that the idea of someone else taking charge felt like a lifeline. Thank you, I said, handing her a folder containing Thomas's important documents. I don't know what I'd do without you. I should have known better. I should have recognized the pattern. Because this wasn't the first time my mother had tried to take financial advantage of me. Growing up, I learned that my mother had a complicated relationship with money. She was always convinced she didn't have enough, despite Dad making a solid income and her not having to work if she didn't want to. She was always asking me for loans when I got older. Small ones at first, $500 for a medical bill, $1,000 for car repairs. Then larger ones, $5,000 for a vacation, $10,000 for emergencies. She never paid any of them back. When I'd try to bring it up, she'd act hurt. I'm your mother. I can't believe you'd ask me to pay you back like I'm some kind of criminal. Family helps family. By the time I was 25, I'd learned to say no. It had taken therapy and a lot of boundary setting, but I'd gotten to a place where I could refuse her requests without feeling guilty. Then Thomas died, and my defenses completely crumbled. 3 months after Thomas's funeral, my mother finally went back to Arizona. She left reluctantly, making comments about how I needed to get my life together and stop wallowing in grief like it was the end of the world. I didn't realize she'd taken copies of Thomas's documents with her. I didn't realize until the phone call from Zenith Viatical Solutions. What exactly is a viatical settlement? I asked the woman, trying to keep my voice steady. It's when a policy owner sells their life insurance policy to a third party, typically an investment firm, for a percentage of the policy's death benefit value. The third party becomes the new beneficiary and receives the full death benefit when the insured person passes away. She was trying to sell my dead husband's insurance policy for $275,000. Yes, ma'am. But we need your consent as the original beneficiary before we can proceed. Can you confirm that you authorize this transfer? Absolutely not. I do not authorize this transfer. I have no idea how she even got the documents. And I'm calling the police. I called the FBI first, actually. The fraud was too complex for local police. It involved interstate commerce, falsified documents, and my mother claiming authority over a policy she had absolutely no legal right to touch. The FBI agent assigned to my case, a woman named Morrison, was thorough and remarkably kind. She explained that what my mother had done was mail fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft, all federal crimes. She used your husband's death certificate, which is public information but shouldn't be used without the proper authorization, Agent Morrison explained. She forged consent documents. She misrepresented herself as the policy owner. And she attempted to transfer a valuable asset that she had no legal claim to. Can she actually go to jail for this? I asked. Yes. If convicted, she's looking at potential federal prison time. We need to build a case though. We'll need all the documentation, the forged papers, the Viatical company's records, everything. Over the next week, I received copies of what my mother had submitted to Zenith Viatical. The documents were absolutely damning. She'd created a fake authorization for life insurance policy transfer. She'd forged my signature as the beneficiary approving the sale. She'd used Thomas's death certificate to establish that the policy was transferable. She'd even created a fake power of attorney document claiming I'd given her authority to manage the estate. The handwriting on the forged documents was obviously not mine. But apparently, the Viatical company's initial review hadn't been thorough enough to catch it before reaching out to verify. They're supposed to verify directly with the beneficiary, Morrison said. The fact that they called you is what stopped this fraud. If they hadn't followed protocol, your mother would have received $275,000 for a policy she had no legal right to sell. I confronted my mother on the phone that evening. I didn't plan to. I just called her, furious, and let the anger speak. What the hell were you thinking? I said, not bothering with hello. I don't know what you're talking about, she said immediately. The Viatical settlement. The forged documents. The life insurance policy. You tried to sell Thomas's policy. I was trying to help you. You were drowning in medical bills. I was trying to get you money so you didn't have to worry. By committing federal fraud? By forging my signature? By using Thomas's death certificate without permission? That's not helping, Mom. That's criminal. It's not criminal if the intention is good. I was thinking about you. That's not how the law works. And I've already contacted the FBI. There was a very long silence. You went to the FBI? On your own mother? You committed fraud. Multiple felonies. And you're worried that I reported it? Juliet, if I go to prison, your father. Not my problem. You should have thought about that before you tried to steal from me. I hung up and blocked her number. The FBI investigation took 6 months. They subpoenaed records from Zenith Viatical. They interviewed the company's employees about their verification procedures. They confirmed that my mother had submitted all the forged documents through the mail and via email, which made it federal mail fraud and wire fraud. They also discovered something else. My mother had done this before. Not to me, but to her sister, my Aunt Linda, who'd passed away 15 years earlier. My mother had attempted a Viatical settlement on my aunt's life insurance policy approximately 6 months after my aunt's death. It had gone undetected at the time because Viatical settlements were less common and less regulated back then, but now, looking at it through the lens of fraud investigation, it was clear that my mother had committed the same crime before. She has a pattern, Morrison told me. This isn't a one-time mistake. This appears to be a deliberate strategy for accessing money from policies held by deceased family members. Oh my God, I said. Has she tried this with anyone else? We're investigating that now. We've reached out to other potential victims. As it turned out, there were at least 3 other attempts that we could verify, each one on a deceased relative's life insurance policy, each one with forged documents, each one submitted during the Viatical settlement process. My mother was charged with multiple counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, and identity theft. She eventually took a plea deal and was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison. She was also ordered to pay restitution, not just to me, but to the other victims as well. When she went to prison, my father had to face the reality of being married to someone who was a serial financial criminal. They're still married, technically, but he lives in Arizona and she lives in federal prison in California. He's never been to visit her. The media picked up the story because it was unusual. Woman attempts to sell dead nephew's life insurance played well in the news cycle. I was interviewed by several local news outlets. I tried to be measured in my responses, tried not to make it about my mother, but instead about the vulnerability of grieving people. When you're grieving, you're not thinking clearly, I told one reporter. I was devastated. I gave my mother access to documents I shouldn't have. I trusted her when I was in no condition to make good judgment calls. And she exploited that grief to commit felonies. 2 years after my mother's arrest, I met someone new. His name is Marcus, and he's a grief counselor who actually understands what I went through because he lost his wife to cancer 6 years ago. We met in group therapy. We started talking. We fell in love slowly, carefully, with the kind of intentionality that only happens when you've already experienced devastating loss once. We got married last year. It wasn't a huge wedding, just immediate family and close friends. My mother wasn't invited, obviously. She's currently 3 years into her 5-year sentence. My father came to the wedding, though. He apologized to me profusely for my mother's actions. He said he'd been in denial about her behavior for years. He said the prison sentence was actually clarifying in a weird way. It forced him to confront the reality of who she was and what she'd been doing. I should have protected you better, he said at the reception. I should have seen this pattern earlier. You weren't responsible for her crimes, I told him. And you're here now. That's what matters. My mother will be released from prison in about 14 months. I'm honestly not sure what I'm going to do when that happens. Part of me thinks we can have a surface-level relationship, maybe a phone call on Mother's Day, a brief conversation at Christmas. But the deep trust is gone. And I don't think it's coming back. What she did wasn't just about stealing money. It was about weaponizing my grief. It was about taking the most vulnerable moment of my life and using it to commit felonies. It was about exploiting the death of my husband for financial gain. I won't ever fully forgive that. I can acknowledge her humanity. I can recognize that she probably has mental health issues that contributed to her criminal behavior. I can understand that she's suffering consequences now for her actions. But forgiveness? No. That's a bridge too far. The life insurance policy was properly settled according to Thomas's actual wishes. I received the full $500,000 death benefit, which is currently invested in helping me build a life with Marcus. We're using it wisely, paying off the house, building retirement accounts, creating the financial security I need to feel safe after everything I've been through. Every time I check the account balance, I think about my mother sitting in federal prison. I think about the fact that she tried to steal this money. I think about how close she came to succeeding. And I'm grateful for the Viatical Company's verification protocol. I'm grateful for the FBI investigation. I'm grateful for Agent Morrison's diligence and compassion. But mostly, I'm grateful that my mother's crimes didn't steal my future the way losing Thomas tried to. I survived my husband's death. I survived my mother's betrayal. I survived the trauma of federal fraud investigations and prison sentences and loss of family relationships. And now I'm building a new life with someone who understands what it means to grieve. Someone who respects my boundaries. Someone who would never try to steal from me, not financially, not emotionally, not in any way. That's worth more than any life insurance policy. That's actually the point of being alive.